Let me go back. You mentioned a minute ago that, in terms of the terminology of mentally ill or insane, and you said, you're going to have to shoot me straight on that. What I want to talk to you about is just observations.
That we can do.
I don't need you to put labels on anything.
Awesome. Well, if you find me I'm just speaking freely now, so there may be points in times where, words come, where I use words to describe the state, Kwani state, mentally impaired, insane. Erratic, manic behavior. I'm using these words because I don't know what other words to use.
Okay.
And so if you would like to direct me in another way, I will use the words that you would like for me to use. So
let me ask you a pointed question. In terms of, do you think collectively as the group that you all maybe had some untraditional worldviews? Or not subscribed to by the masses, I'll say.
Not subscribed to by the masses? Yes, I'll take that compliment.
Okay. And I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just trying to get to the root of it.
I'll take that compliment, like I said.
The purpose of my question is I want to establish with you, and I will do it through questioning, the difference between an independent delusion that Kuwani might have been having versus belief systems that you all adopted that maybe are a departure from the masses.
Yeah, I hear you. I find that to be rather irrelevant to the whole thing because, we're talking about a woman, and so here's the thing. I'm going to lay it down for you like this. When we went to Florida, me and Jennifer, we had a real curiosity about this, and we're like, what kind of strangeness is this? I met Z. I think, like I say, I feel like I had met the wives briefly at Peggy's house, but only for a minute, and I can't remember if that's how it was or not, or if I didn't actually meet them until Florida. But I feel like
I don't mean to be disrespectful or interrupt you, but we have to have whatever your responses are be in response to my question.
Okay, very good.
So let me just ask a narrow question.
Very good.
In terms of the belief systems or the things that you may have discussed amongst the group, was there any type of belief that the world is fake or things are not real around?
Not real?
Mm-hmm.
Well, define real.
Okay. Do you recall having discussions or the group subscribing to some type of a belief that...
No, I asked you a question.
Okay.
I asked you to, or I made it as a statement, define real.
Okay. Was there any belief system amongst your group that there is an alternate reality or that what we're perceiving or living is not actually what we're perceiving or living? So
I'm going to answer that with facts.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to go back to what I was talking about before, that it is fact that atoms, A-T-O-M-S, exist, and that atoms are mostly just empty space. Okay, and so they are colliding particles that form a visual and materialistic reality that we experience right now. Now, if we are to define what is real, then you are to define what is real by your senses, because these fundamental understandings of factual reality are understood by intellectuals all over the world. Now, whether the common ignorant masses can put them into practical application for their own life and their own ability to strive to understand and comprehend themselves and see reality as it is, I live amongst the inept. But to describe something that is mostly empty space as real is scientifically, logically, and factually repugnant.
Okay.
So real would mean that we have our senses and we are connected to these bodies. And like many tens, hundreds of millions of individuals around the world, I hypothesize, and I would call it to be my belief that that we all have souls, that there is a soul, that there is an energetic manifestation that is participating in this reality in a body. So there's something greater. There is something greater. To answer your question directly, there is something greater happening here than what the inept can perceive or choose to perceive.
Okay. And did Z and Kuwani and Gami and Shalig, did they all sort of share that view? Are those things that you all discussed?
Well, this intellectualism was shared by myself and Z for sure. Like we talked about this immediately.
Okay.
But like I say, I mean, I know several individuals who are able to keep up with these like types of conversations and comprehensions of fact.
Did you all believe that you had some type of broader consciousness, or I don't know if I'm using the right terminology?
I think that everyone has the potential to have a broader consciousness.
Okay.
That did I know it to be factual that I am pursuing that, and that the average individual is not? 100%.
Okay. And was that sort of the tone of the group in terms of like your,
Absolutely.
I guess, broader calling in the world?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to put words into the mouths of these other individuals. Now, we have some agreements.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have some agreements into the matter of what is factual, scientific understanding.
And to your point on that, like, what were the agreements? In what way were you like-minded with Kuwani, Shalig, Z?
I mean, we're not talking about them. I'm talking about Z.
Okay.
I don't think
I want to talk about the collective group. And
I think that these are women. They want to run and laugh and be silly on the beach. Me and Z are sitting here discussing, doctorate level, perceptions in quantum physics. Yeah. But these women don't have these conversations.
Okay.
They play with the baby and they do what women do, and they be, silly and, smile and laugh and do things like that. Like, what are you talking about?
So you observed them more to be sort of carefree and fun and playing and laughing?
Yeah. We're not having these conversations. I'm not having these conversations with these women.
Okay.
I don't even know if they're capable of that.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, which is not an insult. It's just a matter of fact.
Okay.
And so that's okay. That's not their role anyway.
Okay.
Their role is to be together and, have like fulfillment in their life from their version of reality that they're experiencing, which is, for the most part, what I saw. I mean, until Kuwani started to really have her break, and become what I would call mentally ill, and her suffering and mental illness had completely consumed her. Mm-hmm. Before that, it was really just like, mostly just a lot of like hanging out and playing with the baby and, laughing and being girls,
All right. So tell me, when you and we've talked about like the word insane, the word mentally ill, in terms of things that you saw from Kuwani.
Sure.
And the reason I started by asking you about worldview is because I was trying to distinguish between things that maybe she was being delusional or having an individual break from reality versus things that the group believed collectively.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're coming from. And like I say again, I feel like that's like, irrelevant, because we're talking about a woman who had complete breaks in her cerebral capacity to understand, to where she didn't remember what just happened.
Okay.
She did, and I don't think that has anything to do whether she's a Mormon or a Christian or a Scientologist.
And that's not my point, but to your point earlier, the law does have definitions, and it does relate specifically to certain symptoms or things that she exhibited. So what I want to know is, from your observations, was there anything that she exhibited that you saw to be a delusion?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, it's like, so what you're asking me is whether the verbiage and the information that was coming out of a psychologically unwell individual was or was not delusion by my judgment or my standards.
Okay.
That's what you just asked. So I'm not sure that, there is. Okay, so I want to make an example for you in direct response to your question. There are individuals who, and this is documented, there have been massive case studies on individuals with things like autism, or things like there are other psychological unwellnesses that we could call them, classify them as mental handicaps, as they would be labeled by society, who have these incredible abilities to give us information that is perhaps unperceivable by a mind. So what we're talking about is frequency and bandwidth. So with some of the things that I saw and heard Kawani say to be delusion, yes, but did I also in her like deranged mental state see, like, it's like, so what is delusion? Like, what, like these questions, it's like, yeah, she was outside of her mind blabbering about complete nonsense sometimes.
Okay. So tell me,
when she would come back.
Let's be specific. What was the complete nonsense she was blabbering about?
Gosh, I can't even remember specific things. But there's also like, okay, so we have to really dissect the mind here to understand, because there was an event that happened on November 25th, which involved a woman who pulled off on the side of the road. Kawani was having an episode, I guess you could say. And this woman pulled off on the side of the road.
All right, let me stop you for a second. What do you mean by episode? What did you observe? What did she say?
Okay, so we'll begin there to come back around to what I was saying.
Okay.
Because it was only after that day that I heard Kawani mention at all the safety of the child.
Okay.
And that was on November 25th. And
of 2020?
And it was because of this woman who had this psychotic, drunk woman who was on drugs and who was threatening us with gun violence.
Let me back up. On November 25th of 2020, where were you guys at?
We were at Peggy's house.
In what state?
North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina.
Who's Peggy?
Peggy is, who is Peggy? Peggy Schindler is someone that I've known for like 20 years. Friend of mine.
Okay.
Yep. I used to work with Peggy's daughter at this sports bar called Hickory Tavern.
Okay.
And
we don't need to get into the weeds. I'm just trying to provide them some context of who Peggy is.
Peggy's a friend of mine for 20 years.
All right.
Yep.
So Peggy's got a house in North Carolina.
Yep,
You all were spending time at Peggy's house.
That's right.
Who was there?
Me, Shaylik, Kawani, Peggy, Z, and Nimsy.
Okay. And how long did y'all spend at Peggy's house around that time?
Day?
Just that day?
No. We were around Peggy's house a lot.
Okay. You specifically referenced November 25th. Why do you know that date?
Because that was the day that this woman pulled off on the side of the road, and I feel like I think that was like a real turning point for Kawani, which had massive effects on her psyche, which led to the death of Nimsy.
Okay. So tell me, on November 25th, you're talking about this woman, which we'll get into that in a minute. Prior to this woman being involved, what were you observing of Kawani on the 25th? On
that day?
Yes.
Okay, so it was actually a pretty normal day. Like, she was being like relatively calm and clear, and like you could tell, like I could always tell it in her eyes when she'd be in a certain place, and then something would trigger her and she would just lose it. Her eyes would change and she would come back and she would not remember what happened. And
what do you mean she would lose it? What would she do?
Gosh, all kinds of things. So this day, she was in there and she'll start shaking and attacking Z and attacking the other girls, and she's tried to attack me before, and never the baby though. That needs to be clear. Never the baby. Because I would have nipped that shit in the bud. I would have not tolerated that, and and I don't think Z would have either. Like, they, So we were at Peggy's, and she starts like, and then she just runs out the door, like for no reason, like no clear and definable reason whatsoever.
So I want to know, what did you see? You saw her shaking,
Or just being like, it's like she's just being like she get this look in her eye, like she like was absent.
So she had an absent look in her eye, and she was shaking. Did she say anything?
She'll like scream, and she's like, I have to go, I have to get out of here. And she like starts screaming, and we're like, Z's like, honey, calm down. Like he's trying to, was like constantly working so diligently with her and being so patient and kind and working with her, because she would come back from these episodes and she'd start crying, and she's like, I don't know what's happening, and she would just like completely like lose her mind. I don't know how else to describe it. This day she just took off running, and we're on Overlook Drive, which is a really dangerous road because there's been people killed on that road before, literally. And pets, all kinds of, it's like there have been major accidents. People fly on that road, and it's known that people go really fast through there. And so Z was like, I was probably in a little better shape than Z, and probably a little faster on my feet at the time. He asked me to go run her down and cut her off and try to get her to like come back, not that like we're trying to like, we're just trying to make sure she doesn't hurt herself, And
what made you think she was going to hurt herself?
Because she's running in the middle of a road.
Okay.
Like, I mean, she's like running like a crazy person down the middle of the road for no specific reason that she made clear, that she just had to go suddenly at that point. And she made no specific reason clear why she was doing that. She made no specific, like, she wasn't trying to go anywhere. She wasn't she had no real purpose. She's just like, an endangerment to herself and to others. Like she's running down the road just like
in traffic?
In traffic.
Okay.
Belligerently. And
okay.
So I'm like, okay, yeah, we probably should like try to get her back. And so I ran down and I cut her off, and she ran back towards Peggy's house in the middle of the road now. And I'm like trying to avoid cars, and like their cars are stopping, and like she's just like running. And she finally like tired out and sat, and then she was sitting on the side of the road, collapsed, crying. And Z asked me to pick her up and carry her back across the street to our house.
You said she was sitting?
She was sitting like almost like on the side of the road, pretty much. And the shoulder is like very narrow on that road, so we're in the road. Okay. Like towards the white line.
All right. And did she articulate anything at that time?
No, she wasn't articulating anything. She was just like crying and sobbing, like just like incomprehensible jargon of like blabbering about like non-tangible things. I don't even know. I wasn't even really listening to her at that point. I was just kind of.
When you say non-tangible, was I'm trying to get at, was she paranoid about something specific? Was she delusional about something specific?
Not that day. Not that day. No, she wasn't.
She was shaking.
She was just.
You said she had some kind of look in her eye?
Yeah, the look, the look that she would get when she would be like absent of herself.
Okay.
And like, it's like, and then you ask her about it later, and like, she's like, I don't really even remember some of these things, like she's like having a complete break in her like ability to perceive reality, basically.
Okay. And when you first saw her behave that way was when?
When I first saw her behave that way was in September. She was not like that in May.
September.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Kawani has, she's admitted to me a lot about her past, which had led her to have like a really, some psychological unwellness anyway. Being like, this is her words to me. Like, we have talked about this as a group, that she was raped by her brothers when she was like 9 years old. That she had an older brother drug dealer who sold cocaine, and she was doing cocaine regularly by the time she was 9 or 10 years old, forced to have sex with her older brother's friends when she was like 10, 11 years old. She talks about how her parents abused her, how she went to her second grade teacher and told her teacher that her parents were locking her in the closet and abusing her.
These are discussions she had with you about her mental well-being?
Her past.
Okay.
Which I think...
Was that in relation to sort of her
totally. I think
mental and emotional health?
I think it was the foundation of her breakdown. the foundation of her breakdown and the mental unwellness began in her childhood, not like when she was like, 20 years old. Like these seeds were already sown by the people that cared for her. And, I remember her saying things like, yeah, my brother's penises were really small, so it wasn't that bad being by them. Like things like that. She would give details about these circumstances, details about being locked in a closet by her parents, details about using cocaine regularly. So I think that the psychological unwellness and the foundation of mental instability, like she was already, these were demons that were planted in her a long time ago.
Let me ask you, did you ever see anyone in the group or yourself be physically violent toward her?
No. And now I did carry her across that street. That's the only time I ever touched Kiwani. Was that one time carrying her across the street to get her out of the road so we don't get hit by a car.
Okay.
That was the only time. Now I saw Kiwani be violent towards everybody in the group. I saw her be aggressive, but not when it would be like a total snap like this. And so, do you want to finish because I'd like to tell about another day.
Sure. Well, let's. I asked you when the first time is that you kind of saw her exhibiting any behaviors, and you said September of 2020.
Yes.
And then you had referenced specifically November 25th as being, in your mind, some pivotal date that
it was a hugely pivotal date.
Changed things.
From my observation of her.
Okay.
Yes. And the things that she was saying, like that woman. There was a woman who pulled off on the side of the road to kind of make whatever was happening to her business. She was drunk, belligerent, she assaulted me and Peggy and Z. This was like a very disturbed woman. And she...
Is this when you're carrying Chloe?
No. I was carrying her across the road, and a woman who lived in the apartment complex was pulling out at the time. And she was like, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, she's just having a panic attack. I'm going to carry her back to the house to get her out of the road so no one gets hurt. And the woman who lived in the apartment complex where we were said, she said, I see, and if you need any help, if you need anything, just let me know. Okay? So that was the woman who lived there. Now, this woman who pulled in off the side of the road was just some stranger, who she pulled off on the side of the road, and Kiwani ran over to her car and was like, I need to call my mom. That's what she started saying then. That's just like a random thing. She hadn't talked about calling her mom at all. That's just something that came out of her, just like some random thought or memory or whatever it was that was like just random that day. After she decided that she needed to run in the middle of the street, we got her back over to the house, and this random, complete stranger pulled inside this apartment complex to make this her business, like I say, rudely and belligerently. And Kiwani started going to her and saying, I need to call my mom.
Okay.
And so...
Had she asked to call her mom up until that point?
No.
Okay.
Like I said, this was just like something that just started coming out of her. It's like, she's just like, all of a sudden, she's just like, I need to call my mom. She's like saying this. And me and C and Shaylee and Peggy are all standing around. Shayla's holding the baby. We're all like, let her call her mom.
Okay. And
let her call her mom. No, she didn't, because this woman started being belligerent and jumping out of the car, and Kiwani started to come back into herself. You could see it in her eyes that she realized that this woman was a danger to her. And the woman started screaming about how we're all going to jail, and she's going to call the cops and get the baby taken from her, and all of these things. These completely, just this belligerence,
So this was a passerby that intervened when she saw you with Chloe, with Kiwani.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
And so what happened after that?
Gosh, a whole scene happened after that. She started being verbally abusive to everyone.
Who's she? Who are you referring to?
This woman named Sandra Torres.
That's the woman that stopped?
That's the woman that stopped.
Okay.
Yeah. And she was like threatening us. Like she threatened. She was, I have a gun in my car right now. I'll shoot you and kill you and all this stuff. Her breath, was rank of alcohol. So she's just this random drunk lady who apparently had a gun and was there's like this whole scene that unfolded. I think that it's I think the most important thing to take away from that day, and why I mentioned it, is because after that day, after she was screaming at Kawani and Z that she's going to get the baby taken away, so she pulls over on the side of the road, and like her story is to be like this vigilante to help this woman who's being kidnapped and blah blah blah. She gets across the road. This woman who's sitting right there was screaming about how she wanted to call her mom. All of the other individuals said, let her call her mom. Simple. Let her call her mom. No one's objecting to this. The only reason why we just had this whole scene is because she's like endangering herself and other individuals. Let her call her mom. Sandra Torres makes this into like, we're all very calm, at this point. Like, we're like, okay, we got her out of the road. That was like our goal. We got her out of the road, and now we're just calm, waiting for Kawani to calm down. Whatever conversations, whatever care we need to show her to get her back into a calm place, we would do. And this woman is just like aggravating this situation, with her own like, drama. And she threatened to have the baby taken away, and that she was going to kill us. And it was only after that day that there was anything in Kawani's delusional speak. Like I said, we have to define what is, in her delusional speak, in her blabbering, when she would go outside of her mind, outside of herself, and her eyes would change, and she'd start to be erratic and sometimes violent. That was the first time ever after that day that she said anything in those states about the baby.
And after that incident, what was it that she said about the baby? It
started as, I need to protect the baby.
Okay.
Like, the baby's in danger. The baby's in danger. Something's going to happen to the baby. And she was also talking about that woman saying that she was going to kill us. Like that, it got inside of her head somehow from this woman about the baby's in danger and all of this stuff. It was a really dramatic shift.
So as it relates to that dramatic shift that you just described and her feelings about Hannah,
yes,
and the baby.
That's why I mentioned it.
Was it always she had to protect Hannah?
Those were the things that I heard her saying, that she needed to. The baby was in danger, and that the baby, and then it started to develop after day, because this, Nimsy died like less than 2 weeks after that.
Okay.
So,
and so, did she ever articulate who she thought the baby was in danger from?
Not really.
Okay.
No.
But in terms of the things she was saying, it was a paranoia of her needing to protect Hannah.
Yeah, and then there was talk about how the baby is going to die. Like,
okay.
I heard her say that. I never heard her say, I'm going to hurt the baby. I never heard her say, I'm going to kill the baby. I never heard her say anything like that. I did hear her say, the baby's going to die, I have to protect her.
Okay. And when she said the baby's going to die, it was in the context of her role to make sure she
protect
didn't.
this child. Yeah.
Okay.
Which was still like coming out in this like really delusional, paranoid, schizophrenic, whatever you want to label these things, type of way, manic. Like, she was having real struggles, and it was coming out in this way. But before that day, there was never any like mention of the baby in her delusions. Like, it was about herself, like that, evil was after her, and that I heard her talk about hurting herself a lot.
Okay.
I heard her talk about committing suicide. I watched her injure herself by punching herself in the face many times. And I've watched her be violent towards everyone else, and never towards the baby. And there was never even mention of the baby until that day. Okay.
So you said prior to that day where Sandra Torres said the baby's going to get taken away, then she started having delusions or paranoia about protecting Hannah.
She did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prior to that, you just mentioned a second ago that she had delusions or paranoia, or whatever word you want to use, related to her.
Sure.
What were her manifestations related to her that you perceived to be some type of mental health related incident? What types of things would she say about herself?
That she was like, in danger of evil, and like there was all this evil in the world. And but see, there you go. We're talking about like things that are coming out of her so it's like she wouldn't remember saying these things. Like she would have these episodes and not remember, but some of the things that she was saying are valid. There is a lot of evil in this world. There's a lot of evil in this room. So it's like, is that a delusion? I don't think so. It's like, is that delusional to say that? Is she in a delusional state when she's making these proclamations? Yes. Is she in a state where she has no memory of what she's doing and is like absent of herself? Because Kawani is a sweet and caring and loving mother. Like I saw her in May, and that's, when Jennifer and I went to Florida, that was the whole thing. Like we saw this baby, and there was this bright, happy, joyous, cared for child. I've been around enough babies to where I know you can tell when they're not in proper care from their mothers. And there was no sign of that whatsoever. Like this baby was completely carefree and happy and joyous, and Kawani was an excellent mother. She was attentive, she was warm and nurturing and loving. She would never strike her husband or the sister wives in the way that I saw her later. She would never do these things. Like, I mean, it was just very apparent, and that was in the child. Like, you could see that in the child. It's like, if I had an aunt who was a little on the loud side, it's like even when her children were little, they were a little on the loud side. You know what I'm saying? Like, children imitate their parents. And so you see it in this child, and you're watching Kawani care for this child, and they're all like fine and wholesome. There's like a lot of wholeness in their group, wholesomeness, and the baby was just fine. Like I wouldn't have continued a relationship with these people. The foundation, because I like Z, I did, and when I first met him, he's a highly intellectual individual who likes to, and we shared a lot of worldviews that are based on fact, and science, and understanding of teachings and things like that. So we hit it off. But
let me ask you. I don't want to get too far afield of what the original. That's okay. Sometimes you get going, and then we don't even remember what the question was.
Full scope.
I get it.
Yeah.
So I want to narrow back in on. You said you had seen her punch herself or injure herself?
100%.
Had you ever seen anybody else restrain her or physically assault her?
Not like that.
Okay.
There was this one time where she tried to jump out of a window in the place where we were staying in Virginia Beach, but and Z hugged her, basically put his arms around her and stopped her. But I've seen Z sit there and take licks to the face and do nothing. I've seen these other girls be abused by Kawani in her delusion. Like I say, she never did that. And when she would come back, she would start crying, and we'd talk about what had happened and how she was attacking people, and she'd start crying, and have an emotional breakdown. She'd just be like, I'm so sorry, and she's just not that way. Kawani's not really violent like that. She doesn't hit. I mean, I had never seen her do that in a clear and I only saw her do that when she was losing her mind, as I say.
Okay.
And this just continued to get more and more intense and severe as time went on.
All right. Now you said, I want to go back a little bit to the incident on the 25th of November.
Yes.
So you said Sandra Torres intervened, that she said things about Hannah's going to be taken away, she's going to have the baby taken away, and that sort of set Chloe on this path where she believed that she had to protect Hannah.
Yes.
How did that incident end on the 25th?
The incident ended, so like I say, this woman that, is sitting here, Sandra Torres pulls off on the side of the road to rescue this woman, so she would say, and this woman who's sitting here willingly and knowingly gets into a car with her husband and her child and her sister to leave, to escape this belligerent, seemingly psychotic, definitely drunk, and threatening of gun violence individual. And Sandra Torres, like I say, Sandra Torres is trying to block Z from leaving. Z's like, we're out of here. Sandra Torres goes into Z's car. Now, this is a random person. Keep in mind, this is just some woman that pulls off on the side of the road, decides to make this her business. Kawani's screaming about how she wants to call her mom. We're all standing around. Let her call her mom. No one's trying to prevent her from doing this or do anything except run in the road and cause harm to herself. Please, here's the phone. Here's the phone. Call your mom, She never did call her mom. She was just being belligerent, and so is Sandra Torres. And then Sandra Torres gets out of her car and goes over to Z's car and takes the keys out of his ignition. So keep in mind, this is a stranger who pulls off on the side of the road and then goes into a man's car who's being calm and cool and let my wife call her mom if that's going to make her feel better. Goes into the car, pulls the keys out of his car, and says, you're not going anywhere. You're going to jail. We're taking this baby away from you. You guys are disgusting people, all this stuff. To strangers. She's doing this. Z takes his keys back from her. Ma'am, this is my property. Give me my keys back. She starts slapping him and assaulting him. They get in the car and leave. Peggy stands... after they had pulled a 50-point turn to try to get past this woman, because she's moving her car to try to block them from leaving. She pulls over to rescue somebody and then tries to stop them from leaving in their own will, and tries to make a huge scene out of it to try to hurt them in some kind of way. She pulls off, and then she starts, and then Peggy is standing in front of the car, and she basically, Sandra Torres started attacking Peggy, beating the crap out of her, slamming her head up against the hood of the car. And I sat there and watched that. And now Z and Kawani and Shayla had already pulled away at this point. So I'm just standing there watching Peggy get her ass kicked, pretty much. And I was I sat there and I watched for probably a little bit too long, to be honest with you. That's how I felt about it, because of the way she was getting beaten by this woman. This woman's very tall and broad-shouldered Nordic woman, and Peggy's this 5'0" petite woman who is not a fighter. This woman has a violent history, and so she's assaulting Peggy and beating the crap out of her. And so I put my body in between Sandra Torres and Peggy, and then Sandra Torres punched me in the face once, and I went like this, and she punched me in the face again, and I picked her up and I put her down on the ground, and I got in my car and I left. And that was the end of that day.
What do you mean you put her down on the ground?
I picked her up and I forced her body to the ground.
Okay. How would you describe a slam? A push?
I picked her up and I dumped her to the ground, yeah.
You picked her up?
Yes.
Physically off of the ground?
I physically picked this drunken, belligerent woman who had just assaulted 3 people and was threatening us with gun violence up off the ground, slammed her down on the ground, got in my car, and I pulled off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were the police ever involved?
Yes, they were.
Okay. When you were there, were the police involved?
No, they weren't.
Okay. Did you call the police?
No, definitely not.
Why not?
Because I rarely find that justice comes from these types of circumstances when police are involved. And I just don't really like you guys.
You've told me that a number of times, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's okay. We don't have to like each other.
That's okay. And that's not personal. I just find that the legal cult
Sure.
and the legal culture, we use that word cult to describe culture. It's just a shortened version of that word. I find that the legal cult is, it brings injustice more often than not.
Were you all collectively as a group sort of not call the police type of people?
Peggy was definitely not call the police type person. I asked her, I was like, you should really call the cops. She's got a black eye and she's all busted up and hair pulled out of her head by this woman. And I was like, man, you should really call the cops. She's like, I'm not calling the cops. She's like, I don't want anything to do with them. We'll just let this go. We'll just be gone with her, and we'll just go about my life.
So you said you got in the car and left, and when did you become aware that the police had been involved?
That's a good question. I can't remember. Days later or something like that, or I can't remember. honestly, when I became aware.
Did you ever get interviewed or spoken to about those circumstances of what happened on the 25th?
No, I never did. Nobody
Okay.
ever asked me about this. This is the first time where I've been able to speak plainly before a court or before anyone involved in that openly about the events of that day.
Okay, so you left. At some point, you became aware that someone else had contacted the police.
Now, when Nimsey died on December the 8th, I gave an interview where I spoke about this circumstance to a woman named Tiana Cruz, I think is her name.
With Canton Police Department?
Yeah, I told her about what had happened and how, because, you know, that day was kind of like a breaking point, and it manifested into, I mean, looking at this from like an outside perspective as best I can, you know, without, you know, it's like I'm very emotionally attached to the baby and to, you know, what happened. But it's like that day, Kawani's delusions go from I'm in danger, these things, to the baby's in danger, to the baby's going to die, they're going to take, to a dead baby. You know, like that's what just happened. You know,
Okay.
so I spoke that very clearly, as far as I can remember in my interview, because I was just so in shock that day. Like I couldn't even believe that this is happening. Like it was just like.
All right. Let me ask just directly. From that incident on the 25th, did you get charged with anything?
I did.
When did you learn that you were being charged with something?
I got charged with an assault on Sandra Torres.
And when did you learn that was the case?
April of the following year.
April of 2021.
Yes.
Okay.
I had no idea.
Did you have any contact with law enforcement between November 25th when it happened and when you got arrested in April of 2021?
No, I did not.
Okay. So you just find out because you have a warrant for your arrest?
Yeah, I got pulled over.
You got pulled over and you
Yeah.
got arrested from a warrant from the incident on the 25th?
That's right, from
Okay.
6 months earlier.
Okay. And what happened with that case?
Well, I wanted to go to trial because I thought that I could win in the name of self-defense, you know, and protection of Peggy Schindler. And Peggy was going to come and testify in my trial that she was being attacked belligerently. Z and Shaylee were going to come and testify that this woman was threatening them and being crazy, and she reeked of alcohol. And she's a known drug user because I know her.
Mr. Spillars, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but we just got to rein it in. So what happened with your charges?
Oh, I got a misdemeanor.
Okay.
I ended up with a misdemeanor.
Did you plead guilty?
I did plead guilty pursuant to Alfred Law.
And what does that mean?
Alfred Law, I was told, means that I maintain my innocence, but I was being held in jail. Like they held me they were holding me in jail, and I couldn't afford my bond, and so I waited for years for a trial for that, and they never gave me a trial, and so I finally pled guilty to a misdemeanor. And I think that they just gave me a misdemeanor because they knew that they would lose in trial, and they didn't want to afford that opportunity.
So you did a time served misdemeanor?
Time served. They sentenced me to 75 after 22 months of incarceration.
You were in jail for 22 months?
I was in jail for 10 months, and then I made bond, and then they re-incarcerated me after 8 months. They held me in house arrest for 8 months.
Okay,
all
so
over
that's
this.
house arrest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all over that.
And then you pled guilty under Alford.
Yes,
Which
to
is
be
just-
released from jail.
To a misdemeanor.
Do a misdemeanor.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. You mentioned that after that incident, Chloe started having paranoia surrounding needing to protect Hannah. Did you ever witness, perceive, or hear her say anything about ever believing Hannah was a danger to her?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever hear her articulate that she felt threatened by Hannah in any way?
No.
Did you ever hear her say that she needed to defend herself against Hannah?
No.
Okay. Was all of the things that you heard with relation to Hannah her needing to protect Hannah?
Yes.
You talked about the sort of response of Shaylig and Gami and Z and you whenever Chloe would have, whatever you want to call them, episodes.
Sure.
What was the response amongst the group in terms of helping her?
Well, I think mostly it was like trying to find patience, you know, and trying to find a way to keep her calm and get her to, at some points, like stop hurting herself. Those are the times where I've seen Z like hold her arms, because she's punching herself in the face, or she's striking somebody else. And I have seen him like hold her hands, be like, honey, calm down, calm down, calm down, and that was pretty much it. Like I never, we would all respond in our own way. I tried to just be as diligent and patient and kind as I could, and try to talk her, because like I said, she would be, she would come, Kawhi's a pretty open person, like she talked plainly and openly about, by her own family members and, all of these things that had led her to be this like fractured person, individual rather. And I would, just be there to listen. That's what I was getting at. Like I would just be there to listen to her about how she was feeling and if there was anything that I could do, and try to avoid that right hook. If she was trying to, kick and scream, and but she only did that to me a couple times.
Let me ask you this. You mentioned that incident on the 25th where she ran out in the road.
Yeah.
After that happened, between then and December the 8th, did she go spend time with her parents at her family's house?
No, she didn't.
Was there ever a period of time where
whoa. You mean after Thanksgiving?
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. I thought you meant from October.
No. The incident on November 25th.
Yes.
And she said, I want to call my mom.
Yes, she did.
Okay.
She did say that.
Did she ever go see her mom and stay with her mom?
Yeah, actually, they came later that day. Eric and Renee. That was like the second or third time that I had met them.
Okay.
They came to pick Kawhi up.
On what day? The 25th?
It was either that or the next day.
The 25th or the 26th?
Yeah, right around there. I can't. It's 4 years.
Okay.
So you're at like.
You're doing fine. So either on the 25th or the 26th, Eric and Renee Driver came and picked up Kawhi.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did they come to?
They came to Peggy's.
To Peggy's house? Okay. And that was in North Carolina?
Yes.
All right. And where were they living at that time? The drivers?
Oh gosh, Tennessee.
Tennessee. So they went from Tennessee.
Knoxville, as far as I know.
They went from Tennessee to North Carolina and they picked up Chloe.
That's right.
All right. Did Hannah stay with you guys?
She stayed with Z.
She stayed with Z. Okay.
Yes.
And to your knowledge, did Chloe go back to her parents' house?
Yeah, she did for like a few days.
Okay. And when and how did she rejoin the group after she went to her parents for a couple of days on the 25th or 26th?
I'm pretty, she kept in contact with her husband, and then I think he went to go pick her up after that.
Okay. And you said, were they still communicating? Z and she were still communicating?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he went to go pick her up. Do you know when that was?
Shortly after that, a few days, something like that.
Okay. A few days after Thanksgiving?
A few days after Thanksgiving, yeah.
Okay.
I think she got really jarred by that whole thing with Sandra Torres.
Okay.
Like I say, there was like a lot of dramatic shifts in her wording and the things that she would say after that.
Okay.
And that was it.
All right. And then tell me about Thanksgiving. Where did you spend Thanksgiving 2020?
Oh, I was there. We did Peggy's, and then I was at my parents' for the rest of the day.
Was Chloe around for Thanksgiving 2020, or was she with her parents?
That was that day. That was Thanksgiving Day.
What was Thanksgiving Day?
The whole event on November 25th.
The 25th was Thanksgiving Day?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. I'm not 100% on that, but I'm pretty sure that was Thanksgiving Day. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would have been after Thanksgiving that Chloe went to her parents.
That's correct.
All right.
Yes.
And then you said it was a couple of days maybe she was with her parents, and then Z went and got her and she came back to the group?
She came back, yeah, she did.
Okay. And when she came back, what was her demeanor like?
Pretty much the same, really. She's regular Kawani a lot of the time, even though at this point in time she had become kind of degraded. Like she was like, her whole like air had become different. Like she was like really like frustrated with herself. Like she was just like frustrated with what's happening, and she was sad. You could tell. And then there was like this whole different air about her that I think, like I said, was part of the whole interaction with Sandra Torres, where she just became, I don't know, she just got this idea in her head about Nimsy after that. There was just like a lot of...
About protecting Nimsy?
Protecting Nimsy, yeah.
Okay. And
like the danger to the baby, that they're going to take the baby. All of these things that had never really come out of her before that I heard,
Okay.
And I mean, I wasn't with them like 24/7, but I was with them a lot, like a lot. So.
Okay. You said that she first sort of started having those types of, I don't know what to call them, episodes, paranoia, whatever it is, in September of 2020?
Well, no, it was before that, actually. It was really during the summer. Like, Z, I was talking to Z pretty regularly. We would just, talk about all kinds of stuff. And he spoke of his wives openly, with me, and how Kawani had really started, it was really in July when he began to, because I think it was in June that I met them at the river that day.
With her parents?
With her parents.
Okay.
And she was fine that day. Like, she was, behaving normally, providing excellent care for Nimsy, being an excellent mother. And, I mean, gosh, I just...
And let me ask you this. At any point, did you become aware of her getting any type of, counseling?
No.
Okay.
Definitely not.
What's that?
No.
Okay.
She did not.
Did you know about her doing anything on Zoom?
No.
Okay.
I did not know about that.
Okay. Did...
Was she doing that? I don't know.
If you don't, I have to ask the question.
Okay,
so if you don't know, that's completely fine.
I didn't know that. No.
Okay.
I didn't know.
And we already talked about kind of the group's views on drugs and sort of the holistic approach.
Yeah, Z did not want her to be institutionalized. That's for sure.
He did not want her to be institutionalized?
He did not want her to be institutionalized, probably for the same reason as like the institutionalization culture probably doesn't offer she's just surrounded by 3 or 4 people who really love her and care about her. And instead of just being a patient that gets doped up with medication and spoken to once a day for an hour by some doctor that she doesn't know, Z was really trying to do this in more of like a wholesome family way to offer Kawani healing.
When she was just her normal self, what was her relationship with Z? How did she interact with him? How did she treat him? What did you observe during this time?
It was like we when Jennifer and I went to Florida, it's like there's like a lot of love there.
Talk to me about Thanksgiving time, December. What was the nature of their relationship around that time?
I mean, sometimes she's around and it's the same. Like, there's a very loving nature and a very there's like a lot of companionship, and between her and the other girls, I remember we were at my house right before, because they had found a house in Florida, because that's one of the things that Kawani was talking about, especially towards the end in October. She's like, we need to find a house. We need to find a house so I can be better, so I can find a place to be and just be in one place all the time, so I can be in this place and I can heal and I can get better.
Did she want a more stable lifestyle than traveling all over the place?
Not before, but no, I think she was just fine with it until she started to really degrade.
Okay.
And then she realized, she would come back from these episodes and we'd tell her what's happening, what had happened. She has no memory of it. She's crying and being all apologetic and, troubled by her own mind and how little control she had.
She believed finding a house and putting down some roots somewhere would be beneficial for her?
Yeah, and that really started to come out in October. After we came back from Virginia Beach, I was letting them stay at my house, and she started to talk about that, even incoherently. She's like, we need to find a place. And so they had found a house in Florida that was for sale.
All right.
And they were going to go buy it and live there.
All right.
And Z had already called about it, and it was in Florida, and we were moving there that day on December the 8th.
On December the 8th, y'all were headed from North Carolina to Florida to move into a house.
To move. We were moving them. I rented a U-Haul in my name for them.
Okay.
And they had all of their stuff packed up in the U-Haul. They were moving to Florida, and we stopped by Jerry's house on the way down.
All right. So on December the 8th, how many days, if we start on December the 8th and we track backwards, how many days had you been with them? Had you been with them continuously from November 25th?
No, continuously since the middle of October when I went to go visit them.
Okay, so you spent every day with them?
Almost every day, yeah,
okay.
Pretty much. Yeah, they were staying at my house. Like I say, I went to Virginia Beach in October. In the middle of, I think I arrived there on like October 11th or something like that. I stayed there until after Halloween. So it was like the better part of a month because I remember celebrating Halloween or walking around for Halloween down in Virginia Beach. And then we came back to Asheville and they were staying at my house. So, I'd come by like all the time. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes I'd stay in the van and I'd come and I'd walk in and we'd talk about feelings in the morning, and which I thought was great.
Okay.
And it was like a real camaraderie and like just like family style life there.
All right. And, as it relates to sort of the efforts to assist Chloe, did she also believe against like drugs and alcohol or things like that?
Totally. I mean, she grew up, like I say, being, using drugs by her own accord, by her own account. Okay. From the time when she was like 9-10 years old, using cocaine every day, and like she was very against drugs.
Did you have any knowledge during this period of time about her desire to try to utilize CBD?
Yes.
And what did you know about that?
So I found that out because she was looking for like some kind of medical assistance, and Z was just not having her be on prescription medication.
Okay.
Because, and I agree with him in this regard that because she would come back from these episodes. It's not like she was like this all the time. And this was a recently developing thing. So
and when you say it's not like she was like this all the time, what in terms
she
of...
wasn't psychotic, losing her mind, belligerent.
Well, in terms of quantifying how many episodes like that you saw or how often that would happen.
Right. Yeah. I wasn't around them all the time at that point, but I know that it really started to get bad in July.
Okay.
So by the time September came around, I saw her behaving erratically. She struck Z for one of the first times she had ever struck her husband when I was there in September. But Z's perspective was like a more like natural homeopathic type thing where he didn't want to institutionalize her, and he didn't want her to be on drugs. He wanted her to work through this and come to a healing on her own. And she was about that too, but she was also looking for, so they decided on CBD. Okay. They decided to try to use CBD, and Kawani had ordered some CBD offline.
She ordered it offline?
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you said that they were both kind of about not medicating traditionally, but that they had explored other options and arrived at CBD.
That's right. To try to just give her some assistance.
Okay. And the CBD that she ordered offline, do you know anything about that?
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I know she just ordered some CBD. She had been taking CBD, and that a package arrived.
From just like a traditional CBD?
Yeah, just something online that she ordered.
All right.
Yep.
And at any time did you provide her with anything in that regard?
I did. Okay. I had some CBD that I bought from a woman in Asheville, North Carolina, that I had purchased because my dad's cousin had cancer. He was using a Rife machine. And he had become cancer-free by using the Rife machine, and he was interested in taking some CBD. And so I bought some CBD from a woman. I could tell you who it was if you want.
Was it a legitimate CBD manufacturer? Was it some shady, back alley? What was it?
No, definitely not. This is a woman who worked in the hemp industry. This is a product that was being sold on store shelves that she had in abundance. And so I bought some of it from her, but this is like a legal product that I bought from her.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in which state?
What's that?
What state?
In North Carolina.
In North Carolina, okay.
Yes.
So it was a off-the-shelf, legally manufactured hemp
That's
product.
what I was told by this woman who works in the hemp industry.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you said you bought that for your uncle?
I bought that for my dad's cousin.
Your dad's cousin.
It would be my cousin too. It's his first cousin, my dad's first cousin.
And so you had some left over, or what was the situation?
No, I had some. I was taking some of it.
Okay, you took it.
Yeah, I did.
And what did you take it for?
I was taking it because I have shoulder injuries from jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And I was trying to, and I had quit smoking weed at that point, and I had been without, I had been clean and sober off drugs for a while. And I, and that was something that happened before I met Z. Like, I quit smoking cigarettes and doing all kinds of things, but before I even met these people, like I said, that was another attraction, that we had, like a commonality that we had, that we were both sober.
So the CBD that you purchased from the woman in the hemp industry that you subsequently gave to Kuwani was CBD you had also personally used?
I had.
Okay.
Yeah, and I used it because I have a shoulder injury and a neck injury from jiu-jitsu, and I was trying to alleviate some of my pain.
Had you taken CBD before?
Yes, I had.
And anything special about this particular CBD?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's fairly non-invasive. It's CBD.
Okay. And what is it about CBD that sort of comports with your views or beliefs about?
Well, I was just trying something. I was just trying to take it and just see if it offered me any relief. Because I had become really opposed to cannabis marijuana at that point in my life. Even though cannabis marijuana had been a part of my life for a while, but I had stopped using it and I completely turned against it, which I think is, I think it needs to be, I think there need to be stricter laws on marijuana, and it needs to go backwards on this whole legalization thing.
Well, for the jury that may not know, what's the difference between CBD and marijuana?
Okay, so the cannabis plant has, from my understanding of it, the cannabis plant has around 85 different cannabinoids found within it. And cannabis hemp is different from cannabis marijuana in that it's harvested for because it's abundant in CBD. And marijuana is like a hallucinogenic drug, which is heavy in THC. So this CBD that I gave to Z and Kuwani, which I wouldn't have even suggested that, but they had already ordered CBD. Like they were already exploring this. And I was like, hey, I have this here. Would you like some of it? And they talked about it and they decided, yes, we will try this that you have. And so it was made from hemp, not marijuana. And it's like I say, it's a product that, that you can buy on the shelf. I bought it from a woman who works in the legal hemp industry in North Carolina.
Okay.
So.
All right. This is a good time for a lunch recess. So we're going to be in recess for lunch until 1 o'clock.